All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in early on a Friday morning. I pray everyone is doing tremendously well as we wrap up the week. My name is Amber Scott, and I am the Director of Communications for Salvation and Social Justice. It is truly a pleasure to be with you all today. As many of you know, there has been so much movement over the past weeks and the past months as it relates to cannabis decriminalization and cannabis, the enabling legislation for legalization throughout the state of New Jersey. And from a salvation and social justice standpoint, you've probably heard us continuously lifting up two things. One, not again, New Jersey, and two, reparations now, New Jersey. And so the thinking here is that we believe that any legislation that plans to legalize marijuana must repair the communities ripped apart as a result of cannabis prohibition committed in the name of the drug war. And so from a salvation and social justice standpoint, we are rather truly committed to uplifting the broken and ensuring the divine spirit can move to uplift traditionally marginalized communities. So therefore, over the past few weeks, you've seen so many of us, along with our wonderful community partners, demanding that the cannabis legalization amendment is inherently anti-racist. So on November 10th, we had a panel titled, "We Voted on Cannabis, so now what?" And then today, we are really doing an extension of that panel where we are really trying to highlight the latest and the greatest, the state of the state as it relates to legislation on cannabis. So today, we have a wonderful lineup for you. We will be giving an update on the status of legalization and decriminalization bills in the legislature. At the end, we'll have a Q&A session. And most importantly, today we really want to reiterate the urgency to act now and to really impact this legislation. Next week, there's going to be committee hearings and a potential floor vote. So this is moving very fast and very furiously. To help guide this community dialogue, we have the best of the best, some of our wonderful community partners. They've been at the forefront of shaping this conversation over the past few months. Today, we have our founding director of Salvation and Social Justice, Reverend Dr. Charles Boyer. We have the policy director from the ACLU of New Jersey, Ms. Sarah Fajardo. We have the president from New Jersey Policy Perspective, Mr. Brandon McCoy, as well as the political action chair from the NAACP New Jersey State Conference, Mr. Todd Edwards. And then last but not least, we have the VP of Communications from Latino Action Network, Mr. Dan Ulloa. So I am just absolutely thrilled to have them all here today. They are the experts in all of this. So I am going to now turn it over to our wonderful panelists, starting with Reverend Boyer and Sarah to give an update on the state of the decriminalization bill. So Sarah, Reverend Boyer. Whoever wants to start first.
Sure. I'm actually going to ask Sarah to kind of go through the logistics of where we are. Both, well, I'm going to ask Sarah to give us the logistics of where we are, and I'll kind of summarize.
Sure. Thanks so much for the opportunity to join you all today. So decriminalization is a critical step as we approach legalization of cannabis. Since the voters of New Jersey approved the ballot question to legalize on Election Day, arrests have continued. And so we have seen a really strong decriminalization bill put forward by Assemblymember Wimberly and Senator Ruiz. It's a model bill for the nation, and it will decriminalize cannabis up to 6 ounces. It dismisses pending charges. It creates really important opportunities for relief for people across the Garden State. And so this bill has passed through the Senate. It included an amendment related to magic mushrooms, psilocybin, with a regrading of psilocybin. And to my understanding and all of the reporting that I've read, there's now a separate bill that is going to regrade psilocybin. So we're really hopeful that the decriminalization, the rest of the decriminalization bill passes as it was passed in the Senate. As I said, it is a really strong model. And I guess the one ask that we have for our legislature is to make sure that this bill is effective immediately, that people, that arrests are reduced across New Jersey as soon as it's signed by the governor. Right now, the effective date is 120 days, I believe, from signature. And so we're just hoping that, and all signs point towards this amendment happening, but that's what we're looking to see happen. So people can get relief right away, especially our Black and Brown community members.
Thank you, Sarah. Reverend Boyer, is there anything else you wanted to add on top of that?
In regards to decrim, no. I mean, one, we know that it must be done. I think Sarah says correctly what the major ask is that it happen immediately, and we need to keep pushing. I'll just say this one piece in general. You know, this is moving so quickly, and I'm really appreciative for everybody who jumped on the line. We know it was short notice, and we know that this is early in the Zoom get on the line world. And so you know, one, it says a lot about all of your dedication to this issue. And please take this information and spread it along. There's a lot happening. It's happening very quickly. It looks like there will be hearings and floor votes next week. So that means, you know, and we're still, you know, waiting to really get through details on the language. So this is literally a minute by minute movement type of situation. And so I recognize almost every single name that is on here. And so I know how you have all played a critical role in being activated and moving this throughout your various networks. So I just want to offer up a huge thank you and a huge debt of gratitude and appreciation for how you all have held the line and move this closer towards a place of justice.
Indeed, I echo those same sentiments. This is a communal effort, right, from start to finish. So definitely appreciate everyone's continued commitment and engagement around this legislation. So next, we are going to pivot to S21A21, which is the cannabis legalization bill. Reverend Boyer, and I see some folks actually put it in the chat, just wanting to know the quick updates again about what the amendment is. So what's currently in S21 and A21? As we know, there's been some really big changes over the past few weeks. And then my second question for you, Reverend Boyer, is what are the promising changes we've seen since the bill's introduction last month, since we have made a lot of strides?
Yeah, thank you, Amber. And I'm gonna definitely lean on both Sarah and Brandon probably to help me with anything. If I inadvertently leave anything out, please chime right in. Couple of updates. One, I believe since the last time that we met in this specific forum, the groundswell that took place as a result of our collective advocacy was definitely heard. I mean, from the jump off point of the cries on social media, from this point, from the amplification, we successfully stopped the bill from moving twice, which says a lot about the power of the advocates on this line. So what has happened since then? One of the major demands was around a social equity excise tax. So they have added the social equity excise tax, and the compromise is that the tax is lower if the price of marijuana per ounce is very high, and the excise tax gets larger as the price of cannabis goes down per ounce. So that's the one piece. We think that that's fair, right? Because if you think about this from a long-term trajectory, you think about alcohol and all, after a while, and especially as other states legalize and we continue to fight to get expansions in regards to licenses, et cetera, eventually the price of cannabis over the long haul would go down, the excise tax would be higher. And the very fact that it's even called a social equity excise tax says a tremendous amount. So that is a powerful nod to everyone's advocacy who is here on this line. Second, they expanded the licenses from, I believe it was 20 something to 37. There is no cap on micro licenses, and there is a 2-year, I believe after 2 years, the cap on the other licenses comes off. Of course, I don't think we'd want all the caps off of all the licenses. In a perfect world, I think that would be a piece that would still be a stickler for us. But it is a major victory in that that those caps are not there in perpetuity. So there is a victory, a major victory there as well. And then in a last minute move on the Senate side, the Senate actually added that 70% of the sales tax would come back to communities in the impact zones, will come back to the impacted communities. So that is 70% on top of the social equity excise tax. That is even a more major victory. So a lot of the numbers that we had talked about, I think, in previous years, in regards to how much revenue can be raised, is create somewhat of a pool of the potential of the kinds of revenue that could be raised over time, not so much immediately, but over time. I think it was a powerful move on the Senate side to make this allocation up front, especially given that the excise tax would be relatively smaller in the beginning at the introductory days of the market. So we see that as a major victory as well. I'll quickly talk about some of the things that we don't like as much, or that we feel that we need to continue advocating for even farther beyond whatever happens with this bill. We still believe there needs to be a social equity applicant status in regards to the bill. There needs to be super easy entry pathways for folks without the resources, and especially folks who had previous convictions. We also feel, and we're having a lot of discussions with the Black Caucus around this, is how to make sure there are dollars in the pot, all pun intended, to make sure that those who want to get into the industry have a set of dollars in order to be able to do so, knowing the economic inequities that exist, and especially the barriers that are in place for folks who have had prior convictions on this. So with that, I'll stop there, and I will ask Sarah and Brandon to chime in at all on any pieces that I may have missed.
Brandon, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You go, and then I'll cover caps.
Awesome. Okay, so Reverend Boyer, you hit I think all of the really important points, and we at the ACLU absolutely agree with everything that you just said. I do want to highlight just for a second that ACLU has been checking obsessively, diligently, however you want to call it, for the final bill language to be posted. And it's Friday morning. We don't have the final bill language posted yet. So we are hopeful that all of those great provisions that Rev Boyer, that you outlined, make it into the final bill. But I just want to let the public know that we're still looking for that. And we will be monitoring it throughout the weekend, as we do have our first hearing on Monday morning at 10 a.m. in person in the Senate Judiciary Committee in Trenton. So Rev, you highlighted all the great things about the tax revenue. We do really want to see some language that was in the Senate and Assembly bills in the previous version that provided for community hearings to talk with community members about where this revenue should go, that those community hearings will be convened by the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. So we thought that was a really good provision and gives at least a window into the conversation, right? And gives some voice to the community members most harmed by the war on drugs to impact how the revenue is directed. Brandon will talk about license caps. And the ACLU has been pushing hard for social equity applicant status. So that gets to, Rev, your discussion about making sure there's opportunity for those harmed by the war on drugs in the industry. We're also still looking for a restoration of funding for expungement. So the original bill last year did have a dedicated budget line for expungement funding. We saw that come out in previous versions, and we're hopeful that that might make it back in. And then there's a last provision that the ACLU is concerned about, that we're waiting to see whether it changes, about workplace drug testing. There's a provision that was included that was troubling, that had very expansive permissions for drug testing in the workplace. And so we're hoping that that comes out as well. And I'm seeing a question in the chat. Isn't the amended bill on the legislative website? I read a 210-page version that seems to have all of the changes that Charles mentioned. Good question. Yes, the bill that's posted on the legislative website passed through the committees about a month ago, but we know that there are still changes being made to the bill that's going to be heard on Monday and Tuesday. And so we're not sure what those changes are quite yet. We're hopeful that the good things stay in. Thanks for the question. Okay, sorry, I rambled. Brandon, you want to take it from me?
No, that's all perfect. And again, just like Sarah said, we at NJPP completely agree with all the points that Salvation and Social Justice has put forth, as well as ACLU. This is really a critically important time in New Jersey, because the legislature is trying to accomplish a lot. They're trying to get this effort done before the end of the year. There are also major efforts in other areas of policy that they're trying to accomplish. And so it's really critical for us to keep track and keep focused on the specifics here, because I know some folks like to think otherwise, but when Trenton rushes, it makes mistakes. And that's the last thing we want, is making mistakes on this critically important priority for the state of New Jersey. I can just speak quickly to caps. As Reverend Boyer mentioned, what we know about the current version of the bill is that it's supposed to have a cap of 37 licenses that would last for, that cap would last for 2 years after the law was implemented. Micro licenses, the cap does not apply to those applicants. But it's really important to not have a cap, or to have a much higher one, simply for the fact of, you want to encourage participation and competition in this market as it is getting up and going, right? You've heard a lot of sort of lawmakers and others say, well, we don't want to tax, we don't want to have such a high tax that the price of cannabis is going to be uncompetitive with other states, or keep the illegal market, thriving. Quite frankly, the tax level is not what's going to do that. It's going to be a lack of competition, and the lack of ability for New Jersey's legal market to meet the level of demand, have enough supply to meet demand, that would keep the price, arbitrarily high. And so, if people are really concerned about having a legal market that can compete, and that can limit or at least mitigate the activity of the illegal market, then they should want to see as many cultivators as possible getting in so that we can meet the demand. We're a small state, but we're dense. You all know this. We got 9 million people here, and then we have everybody living in New York City and Philadelphia. There's going to be a lot of attention. There's going to be a lot of interest, to put it lightly. And so to have, you know, a limit of 37 licenses for the first 2 years it was really tough to imagine the market being able to grow as much as it needs to. And when you look at other states, you know, the number of cultivators, even Alaska, population of 731,000 people has over 200 cultivators, right? And so that's the main concern, is that we want to make sure the market can grow, but we also want to make sure that the market is a place where there's diversity and where folks who have previously been harmed by the war on drugs, currently are harmed by the war on drugs, and especially those who've been arrested, have the opportunity to take part and have, you know, be full entrepreneurs in this growing market. It's a terrible thing to have spent, you know, decades arresting and criminalizing people for this activity, and now we're going to turn around and make it into a money-making enterprise and not, do our very, very best when it comes to ensuring that's done in a just manner. And so, getting rid of caps, or at least having a much, much higher limit, and entrusting the Cannabis Regulatory Commission to steward that process would be best.
That's super insightful. Thank you so much, Brandon. Next, I want to turn it over to Todd. Todd, would you mind just walking us through the importance of building an equitable industry right now? Just give us some of your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much. I want to tell you, first of all, Amber, thank you for hosting this. You're doing a wonderful job. I've been a part of a bunch of these over the years, so you're doing a great job. I want to talk first also too, thanks Sarah and the ACLU. You guys have been there since day one that this bill, I heard Amber say for the last few months, we've been structuring this and putting it together, but ACLU has been there with the NAACP since 2015. So the last few years, as opposed to the last few months. So we're putting in the work, we're almost there. Now let's talk about the importance. Most New Jerseyans don't have the privilege of legacy wealth. So we need to make for sure we have access to the startup capital for the microloans, just like Rev was, and everyone on this call is veterans at this, and we're on board with most of the language. So we definitely need to make for sure that the common person has startup capital. We need to make for sure that the neighborhoods mostly affected by this, like was said earlier, is at the table benefiting from this, but at the same time, we don't want weed shops on every corner in our neighborhoods, like alcohol or like the liquor stores in our neighborhoods. But we definitely are keeping our eye on the resources, and we want to make sure our neighborhoods are impacted with the 70-30 that is coming down the pike. So we definitely need access to startup capital. We need to figure out how we're going to partnership up to open up funding and grants. We need to get creative in this industry as a whole to make for sure we have the ability to buy in, and we don't let the outside big players come in and just take over. The importance of this is a lifetime of finances for Black and Brown communities, and we need to make for sure that we do this right. I agree with Brandon to an extent on the caps. I agree with you 100% on leaving it to the commission afterwards. I'm just worried that we don't, we really have to be careful on the tax and the pricing so we do not keep the Black market legal. That is my biggest fear in all of this. I know I've been watching other states, obviously, and the Black market is thriving. So we just have to be really careful on all of the taxes. I don't want to overtax it. We're playing a tough game, but we just got to keep our eye on it and make for sure that it is watched the right way and played the right way, so our community is impacted properly. And good luck to everybody. We have to get creative to get everyone involved. We have to have the common person, the New Jerseyans, benefit from the business. Bottom line, we don't want outside coming in and taking over and taking the opportunities that we fought for our people, for New Jerseyans to benefit from this industry. And that's what we are keeping our eyes on. Thank
Yeah,
you.
hands down. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So next, we're going to shift over to Dan. Dan, it would be really helpful just to hear some of your thoughts on the importance of employee protections, such as drug testing and other labor issues that also come about as a result of this legislation.
Yeah, thank you, Amber, for the introduction. You know, the Latino Action Network has been happily advocating with the ACLU for some years now, as we've made steady progress under our president, Christian Estevez, our secretary, Cookie Rivera, and Lazaro Cardenas. So, you know, I'm happy to be representing Lon now. And, you know, it's really great to see that we're at this point. We're about to get legalization. You know, I think prohibition has been fundamentally racist against Hispanics since the beginning, actually. You know, nobody called it marijuana officially before 1937 when they wanted to associate it with migrant workers from Mexico. You know, they called the medicine hemp, they called use, you know, hashish, for example, then they threw the term marijuana. So, you know, I think we definitely need to get past that. And, you know, it's really great to see New Jersey is about to have a great adult use cannabis market here in New Jersey. But, you know, as you mentioned, unfortunately, there are some issues here, you know, with the of worker protections. You know, I understand that Senator Paul Sarlo believes that, you know, companies need to be protected. I believe workers need to be protected. I think language in the bill right now is a little too broad. I think it would hurt a lot of workers who might have enjoyed cannabis on the weekend and might be, you know, in trouble on Monday for any other reason, and then they're going to use cannabis to justify that and fire them, and there won't be any recourse. And we cannot have that. I think there absolutely needs to be better language in the bill to say that this needs to be a reasonable testing, for example, that it cannot just be so broad that workers cannot have protection. You know, we've seen, you know, Governor Murphy in the legislature has advanced workers' rights and advanced, you know, 15 an hour, you know, examples. You know, I think this would be great, you know, in that vein, to protect workers so that they can enjoy, you know, this market. You know, who's going to buy it? So if there's going to be, if everybody's like afraid of testing, then, you know, then we're not going to be able to get, you know, the sales to fund the great programs that we need to deal with the devastation that our communities have suffered. You know, Hispanic and African American communities throughout New Jersey have suffered to over-policing, police brutality, and great indifference from many people. So, you know, I'm very happy to be here. Very happy. You know, we're at this point. So it's been quite a ride since Election Day when we won with 67% of the vote, more popular than Joe Biden, you know, popular among moderates, you know, liberals, conservatives, you know, Republicans, Democrats, Trumpers, and Bernie-crats. So, you know, it's really great to be there. And we have like a great social bill, you know, it's definitely something to be said. Social justice advocates getting those provisions, you know, getting funding for social programs in the bill, you know, that's something that's really important and, you know, something that was lacking at the beginning. So, as Sarah was saying, I am probably going to have to be working around at 8 o'clock tonight, you know, waiting to see what the legislator cooks up. So, quite a day, some excitement.
Thank you, Daniel. So real quick, I'm going to take a quick break just to emphasize that there are specific actions that we can take right now on today. I'm going to put a link to an ACL New Jersey action alert that you can sign on to. So I'll put that in the chat shortly. I also want to emphasize that you can call your legislators today, next week, just emphasizing all of the things that we are talking about right now in terms of the additional provisions that we would love to see in these bills. And then lastly, I invite you to register to testify at the assembly hearing, which is scheduled for next week on the 15th at 11 a.m. Make your voices heard. So now I want to shift gears and open it up for Q&A. There are a few questions in the chat already, so I'll honor those first. And then I have a few other questions that I prepared ahead of time for the panelists. So first question And we actually received this ahead of time as well. How will legalization affect the medical marijuana community? So if any of the panelists want to take that, how will it affect the medical marijuana community? Don't all jump at once.
Well, like we would like, the availability of medical cannabis to improve. The program obviously, was not implemented under ideal conditions under former Governor Chris Christie. It has been growing steadily under Governor Murphy, that we're near 100,000 patients. We only have about 13 dispensary locations, and that's really the problem, is that like there really is not enough access to cannabis, to medical cannabis for people, and the cannabis that does exist is often subpar and too expensive. So ideally, in like the notions of capitalism, there'll be more competition, more cannabis, more licenses will be issued, which is why, we can't really have a license cap. We need more cultivation. We need more dispensaries. A lawsuit has been holding up 24 licenses for about 13 months now. NJDOH, Department of Health, just lost a lawsuit from 2018 regarding those license rounds. And I think they need to concede the 2019 lawsuit for the betterment of New Jersey patients.
And I'll just add on really quick onto what Daniel is saying. There is language in the bill that tries to ensure that the medical need and the medical demand is met before the recreational cannabis is available for purchase. And so there's been some effort to try to make sure that patients are able to get the medicine that they need. And then Brandon, I don't know if you want to say anything about the social equity excise tax not applying to medical.
Yeah, the tax that exists currently on medical is supposed to phase out as the recreational program phases in. And so that is another reason to ensure that the recreational program gets up and running in a strong and robust manner, so that we're not taxing medicine for people. We don't do that in pharmacies. We don't do that anywhere else. So we should not do that in this instance either. But at Dan's point made about the lack of dispensaries and the lack of access is that carries over to the recreational market as well, right? And so again, we're a very, very populous state. I know you all know this when you drive on the Parkway, right? We got a lot of folks here. We need to be able to have enough storefronts and dispensaries and cultivators to actually meet that level of demand. Otherwise, we are going to allow the illegal market to remain very much so active and in business.
Yeah, I am a current medical marijuana patient, so I can speak a little different than probably everybody else on here. The access to the medical marijuana we definitely have to do better, no doubt. But we at the same time have to be careful. It is definitely overpriced right now. I would disagree on someone said the quality. The quality is definitely fine. You know what you're getting as opposed to the black market. So the lines are outrageous. I'm from true South Jersey. Brandon keeps referring to the Parkway. I never drive on the Parkway. So we're in the true country down here where we got cows and fields. The reason New Jersey is the garden state. So the medical marijuana program to not tax it is absolutely perfect. So phase that out. I was concerned about that initially, but everything is on the table. As long as the commission has their eyes on these things, I'm going to be comfortable.
Okay, thank you. We had a question in the chat earlier. This is an interesting one. Someone said, as someone who is skeptical of the idea of having social justice funding allocation be placed on the ballot in 2021, what are some of the funding details being advocated for with legislators? And that's not me saying that, that's the question, as someone who is skeptical of that.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that because I'm skeptical of the ballot question as well. And I'm skeptical of it, I'll tell you why I'm conflicted. One, I think, first of all, the Senate is right. The way that our Constitution works in New Jersey is the budget trumps everything. So technically they have historically rated funds that legislatively were supposed to be for certain things and have rated it to plug budget shortfalls. So there is that ability to trump everything that we have worked for here. And so the only way to not do that is to have it constitutionally mandated. So first and foremost, the Senate is right from a legal constitutional perspective. And in a perfect world, I agree. In a perfect world, we flip the switch, it's a constitutional mandate, the fund can never be rated. But here's the practical problem. The practical problem is that this takes place in 2021, which is an off-year election in which the majority of the electorate is white. And first of all, I think it is a matter of white supremacy and privilege to put a question about Black people in front of a majority white electorate. That's a structurally racist problem in and of itself. Secondly, if the Senate really meant it, that should have been question number 2 in last year's election. There should have been a second question. That should have been question number 2. Question number 1, do we legalize? Question number 2, that should have been 2 separate questions. Now, with all that being said, if there was, with all that being said, I also have faith that if there are enough resources, enough boots on the ground, that could get the word out to Black and Latino communities about the ballot question, do the type of voter registration, did the type of movement where we have a fully fair and representative electorate, that would be a different situation. And so that is why I am skeptical of it. I certainly do not trust the Senate as the ones bringing it to light, being that they were the very ones who took everything that was a justice provision out of the bill, shoved it under the door with 206 pages in the middle of the night right after a presidential election, and tried to get it passed as fast as possible with no justice provisions whatsoever. I don't trust their intent at all. And I know them well enough to know that they think if it gets to the ballot, that it will fail, because have you ever seen a question, 1, about taxes, or 2, about reparations, that a majority of Black people, that a majority of white folks have voted in favor to do the right thing by Black and Latinos? That answer will be no. Even in this past presidential election, the majority of white folks voted for Donald Trump. So while we have a lot of allies, right, we have to be very careful in what kind of questions we put in front of people that do not have our best interests.
The only thing I'll add to that, which I 100% echo, is that this is the challenge of living in a state with a explicitly a budget process that does not priority equity or justice in any sense of the word. Reverend Boyer makes the point that the way that the budget works in the state, budget crises and emergencies take precedence over everything. We have an affordable housing trust fund, which has been raided on the regular over the past decade plus. We have other trust funds where, things with regards to the environment that have been raided. There was recently, just a few years ago, a constitutional amendment passed to protect certain environmental provisions because of people's concerns about the raids of those funds. And so it is true that the only way to protect these dollars going to communities, for sure, in an ironclad way, is to put it on the ballot. But like Reverend Boyer said, if that was truly the intention, they would have done that this past November and not thought about it now for next November. It is going to be a challenge to ensure that whatever dollars are committed to community are actually directed by community, right? It's one thing to commit dollars to community, but then if the folks who are making decisions about where those dollars go are not being informed by the community itself, or claiming to speak on behalf of the community when they definitely are not connected to them in a sufficient fashion, then it's not exactly what we've envisioned with regards to truly achieving equity and justice. And so it is not a very, it's not a black or white issue. It's not very straightforward, but I share Reverend Boyer's skepticism. We identified the difficulty of this proposal, but the fact of the matter is we should be trying to figure out a way in legislation through the legislative process to direct dollars to community that are directed by community. And a perfect example is we have a cancer research fund, and through the budget process, legislators direct dollars into that fund. And then there's a panel or a board of representatives for that fund that then meet and decide where those dollars should go. I don't see why we cannot do something similar in this scenario.
I want to echo in on that as well. I honestly think that we need to keep our eyes on the commission as well to make for sure we have representation on the commission. I love Diana Wainu from the ACLU, from the governor's office, formerly of the ACLU, but we need Blacks, we need Black men who have been arrested and who have been involved in this fight, on that commission. We need Hispanics. We need say all the way through this whole process. It just is frustrating me how and we just need to keep an eye on that. That's all I'm asking for, Brandon. So, yeah, we're going to, and I don't have faith in the ballot initiative as well. So it's no way, Rev, you hit every point on it. It's no way that an off-presidential election, we win that initiative. We have to fight like hell to make for sure that doesn't hit the ballot. So I can speak for the NAACP. That's where we are standing 100% on that one. I spoke with my President Smith and he is right on board. So yeah, we don't need a ballot initiative.
Yeah. Preach, preach, preach. Wow. Thank you all for each of those comments. So just going back through the chat, this should be pretty quick, but could you just walk through all of the testing that's included in the bill? If Daniel wanted to do that, or if anyone else wanted to take it.
Yeah, so there is testing in the bill, an amendment for workers. There's two amendments. Obviously, we have problems with the Senate and Assembly versions don't meet up. Senate version has more broader language on which workers could be tested under any number of circumstances. The Assembly includes the word reasonable, which is an improvement. That way, there are certain circumstances under which reasonable testing under justifiable circumstances, for example, makes sense, but not under these broad circumstances. And yeah, we certainly do not want another referendum, especially if it would give money to the police. As previously noted, we certainly not have the votes for that.
Okay.
And I'll just echo what Dan is saying. Reasonable suspicion follows other provisions, right, that we see elsewhere in the law. And so, removing that word reasonable really gives employers incredible discretion to test folks. And so we're concerned about, the legality of it. The ACLU still is looking into that. And we would really like to see reasonable stay in that provision to try to afford workers some protection.
Great, thank you. Next question. In the unlikely world that the MORE Act that passed in the US House passes the Senate and is signed into law, how does that impact New Jersey's programs and laws? And thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you for the time today and your insights as always. Brandon has to head out.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it shows people the importance of voting on the it will affect us, because then in New Jersey and throughout the country, we will be able to get money and loans and be able to put money in the bank and treat this like the industry that it should be. And all the federal regulations will then come off. It will affect us tremendously here in New Jersey. So in a positive way. So I'm all in favor of it. If I had time and didn't have a wife and kids, I'd be in Georgia knocking on doors trying to get the Senate flipped, and we got our work cut out for us. But I'm praying that happens.
So to chime in a little bit here, and Sarah, the ACLU can help me out, because the MORE Act is essentially a decrim act, correct?
Yeah, I believe so. And I'm phoning a friend, Amika Chalia, in the chat too, to weigh in here as well. And it does provide some good legal remedy, right? So it does provide some expungement. It does provide, I think, some tax revenue and investment. And so from our perspective, we really do feel like it's an incredible first step. It is a floor, so New Jersey can continue to do better. It's a decriminalization bill. Ami is schooling me live. A decriminalization bill, and it lays out the equity provisions that we're trying to pass in New Jersey. So.
Yeah. So essentially, right? It's I think we're essentially, I think it will at least give some federal undergirdance to what we would have already done here in New Jersey. And if I'm not mistaken, outside of maybe one piece or two, we would probably be more progressive than what they've put out there, my understanding. So I'm not sure, outside of a cultural perspective, that it would have a massive impact. But in regards to trends and kind of where things are going nationally, it does have a major impact.
I apologize. I was off topic with the MORE. I missed the MORE part of it. I thought we were talking about the other legislation federally. I apologize.
Okay. So we are coming up on our time together. We were hoping that this would just be, quick hitting, state of the state, top line. So it looks like we've gotten through most of the questions in the chat. I just have a few things that I would love our panelists to talk about. A lot of this has already been discussed over the course of the past 50 minutes. But what happens after next week? I would love to hear each of your thoughts on that. And if you have any concluding takeaways, even outside of answering that question, what happens after next week, please share that as each of you are going. So we can start with Sarah, then go to Daniel, then Reverend Boyer, and Todd.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Amber, for moderating us today, making sure that we're staying on track and covering what we need to cover. And thank you to Salvation and Social Justice for hosting us, and for all the work of everybody here to keep this bill focused on what it has to be focused on, right? Racial and social justice. That's why the ACLU got into this fight, to really end the over 3,000 arrests that happen every year, and try to provide some equity in the industry as well. So we'll see a hearing on Monday, a hearing on Tuesday, and hopefully we see a vote on a really great bill on the 17th. After that, it heads to the governor's desk. And then, the fight continues, as Todd said, with the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Will start regulating and providing really the shape and detail of the industry. And then I'm going to say this, since Brandon's not in the house anymore, on his behalf too, right? We'll have to keep an eye on the budget process to see where that funding goes, and make sure that it's directed towards communities harmed by the war on drugs. And so I hope we can breathe a sigh of relief. I'm going to take a nap, hopefully, after the 17th. But, we're going to get right back to it. So stay tuned for more from us.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Daniel?
So the referendum is supposed to take effect on New Year's Day, January 1st, regardless of what happens. Ideally, we would like to see the enabling bill pass next week. The committees be reconciled and get a just implementation here. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission still needs 3 more commissioners, I believe, to actually take effect. And start regulating. So like it might be a year before we see, at least before we see adult use cannabis, for sale and, see that revenue collected. CRC should have been seated months ago, but it was not. But that's another story. But, we're here fighting for, just legalization, and that's what we will continue to be doing. As things going, and certainly, an exciting week. We had a little break this week, with no deals announced. So we'll see what happens next week. I definitely encourage everybody to sign up to testify if they have the time and ability to do so on the NJ legislator site. And stay tuned.
Thank you, Daniel. Reverend Boyer?
Yeah, I'll let Todd go, and then I'll close us out with a benediction.
Yes.
I know that's right. Save the best for last, Rev. Save the best for last. The closer. I just want to say thank everyone, and legitimately everyone on this panel. From Reverend Boyer, you've been huge. ACLU, Latino Action Network, all you guys have been wonderful partnering up with this, and we're going to continue to be productive, I promise you. I don't think there's any nap-taking time for all this till after the holidays, so we're going to wrap it up, I promise you, and we're going to keep our eyes on this commission. That is, and the money. So I think it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and I agree, and I thank Todd, and just to give a couple of closing thoughts, I think Todd is spot on. Like, y'all, this work, I know it's been many years of work, and it feels like in some ways that it's almost there. But I would say that we are just getting past the first phase. And this really requires, so to the point of the constitutional amendment, if we are to make everything that has been worked for effective, it means we have to stay on the wall at every point beyond this. That's in budget season. Todd is spot on. We have to work and push the regulatory commission to do the right things. We have to advocate for the regulations that comes out of there. We have to be present during budget season. We have to make sure that communities have input. It is so critical that we stay engaged with this process and that we continuously engage our elected officials. So just in closing, I do want to take a little bit of a sentimental moment. Ami is on the line, and prior to Ami coming to the ACLU, she was part of the Drug Policy Alliance, which was also in this fight at the very beginning, and is why I'm in this fight. And so I just wanted to shout out the Drug Policy Alliance and that team that did so much work on this all the way from 2015, and even dragged a preacher into this game from the southern parts of New Jersey that they drug me in, and here I am today, really here side by side with the ACLU, the NAACP, and others. But I just want to give a major shout out to all the work the Drug Policy Alliance has done and had done before leaving New Jersey. in an official capacity, just a piece of sentimental moment for the work that have been laid out by DPA and the sacrifice. We cannot forget what they have done to get us to this point. And so with that, I thank you all. I thank you all for joining us with such short notice. Spread the word, keep advocating, keep fighting, keep pushing. And we would not be where we are had it not been for you. God bless y'all. Take care.